I never imagined that a simple dare would lead me into a labyrinth of forgotten memories and supernatural terror. But on that foggy autumn night, armed with little more than flashlights, smartphones, and the reckless spirit of youth, my two friends, Elena and Marcus, and I found ourselves venturing into the derelict remains of the old Turkadilmis amusement park. Abandoned for over a decade after bankruptcy and strange, inexplicable incidents, it had always been shrouded in mystery in my family's lore. My own connection ran deep. My grandfather once worked there as a maintenance man, and he would often regale me with eerie tales of the park's haunted rides and inexplicable occurrences that chilled him to the bone. That night, driven by both a dare challenge and the lure of urban exploration, we crossed the threshold between the mundane and the macabre. As we approached the park's rusted gate, a thick fog rolled in, turning the night into a haze of ghostly shadows and intermittent cold spots that sent shivers up my spine. The entrance was marked by a crumbling sign and a heavy silence that felt almost sentient, as if the park itself were holding its breath. Elena, ever the courageous one, led us through the debris, her eyes reflecting equal parts fear and determination. Marcus, quieter than usual, clutched his smartphone tightly, his fingers trembling ever so slightly as he documented our journey. I, driven not only by youthful bravado, but also by a need to confront the remnants of my past, felt a peculiar heaviness in my heart, a mix of dread and a longing to understand the place that had haunted my family's stories for as long as I could remember. Our first stop was the once joyful carousel, now a decaying monument to a happier time. Its painted horses were chipped, their eyes glassy and lifeless. Yet as I stepped closer, something inexplicable stirred within me. I could swear I heard a soft, melodic tune, faint but insistent, as if the carousel had a heartbeat of its own. The sound was interspersed with sudden static bursts, a distorted call that made the hairs on my arm stand up in terror. Elena paused, her flashlight beam trembling across the peeling facade, and Marcus snapped a quick video. Supernatural presence was subtle, but undeniably there. In that moment, I remembered my grandfather's whispered warnings about the park's possessed rides, an affliction born of grief and malice that seemed to cling only to the heart of this forsaken place. We made our way past the carousel, stepping gingerly over shattered glass and twisted metal. The path led us to the towering Ferris wheel, its skeletal structure looming against the foggy night sky like a defiant sentinel of despair. The wheel, suspended in eerie stillness for years, inexplicably creaked as if stirred by an inhuman wind. I felt drawn to it, a magnetic pull that both terrified and fascinated me. The ride's gondolas swung slowly, though there was no breeze to account for their movement. I tried to rationalize the events with logical fears, a malfunctioning mechanism, the product of years of neglect. Yet my rational mind was constantly undermined by the chill that ran down my spine every time I heard that low, unnatural groan emanating from deep within its metal guts. We ventured deeper into the park, our group alternating between moments of eerie calm and panic-inducing terror. In the quiet intervals between ominous sounds, I could almost discern whispers of long-forgotten souls echoing through the corridors of the abandoned funhouse, their voices merging with the creaks of the decrepit rides. Elena's laughter during the brief, almost mocking interludes did little to ease my growing sense of impending doom, and Marcus's recorded videos captured flickers of movement that no one else could see. A figure shifting in the background, a shadow passing just beyond the reach of our light. While navigating the maze of broken attractions, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were treading on hallowed ground. A place where the boundary between the living and the dead was dangerously thin. Each step seemed to echo with the memories of the park's past, a bittersweet reminder of lost joy and unspoken horror. The atmosphere was heavy with sorrow and malice in equal measure. I recalled how my grandfather once described the park as a place where laughter got lost in the wind and the rides bore witness to sorrow. That recollection only added weight to my steps as we neared the heart of the park. Time lost meaning as we drifted through the labyrinthine park. The fog thickened, and the once familiar landscape transformed into a surreal nightmare of shifting shadows and unearthly cold spots that made it feel as if the very air around us were alive with hostility. Our only source of light, the harsh beams of our flashlights, created stark contrasts and played tricks on our eyes, making every corner hide potential terrors. It was then, as we approached a long-forgotten arcade and midway between the decaying carousel and the haunted Ferris wheel, that the atmosphere shifted dramatically. An unsettling silence descended, punctuated by sudden, inexplicable sounds, a metallic scraping, the soft murmur of voices just beyond comprehension. Marcus stopped dead in his tracks, his hand automatically reaching for his phone as he aimed it in the direction of the disturbance. His eyes, usually brimming with curiosity and calm, now darted nervously as he whispered, "Did you see that?" in a tone that betrayed his growing panic. We pressed on, retracing our earlier steps and reapproaching the carousel with a hesitant hope that we might witness its mysterious activity again. The carousel, now bathed in the eerie glow of our flashlights, seemed nearly sentient, a relic of a once glorious past now possessed by an otherworldly force. As I reached out tentatively to touch the cold metal pole of the ride, a sudden gust of wind, impossible in the still night, swept over us, and the carousel began a slow, creaking rotation. I froze, heart pounding, as the figures painted on the horses appeared to contort in the dim light. The pastel colors seemed to bleed together into grotesque, shifting patterns. There it was again, the distorted melody, now louder and filled with sorrow and longing. In that moment, Elena let out a sharp cry. I turned to see her stepping back toward the dark perimeter of the park, eyes wide with a terror that mirrored my own. "Guys, something's not right," she whispered, half to herself and half in a plea for reassurance. I tried to offer a calm smile, insisting that we were safe and that our imaginations were running wild. But beneath my bravado, a cold dread seeped into my bones. Marcus, meanwhile, was both filming and recording audio, his gaze fixed on the carousel as if he were hypnotized by its tragic dance. Our uneasy exploration continued, and the night seemed to warp around us, oscillating between moments of strange beauty and heart-stopping horror. As we moved towards the Ferris wheel once more, I began to notice that the lights on our devices flickered strangely, as if the park itself was interfering with our technology. The cold spots grew more frequent and intense, and the sound of distant, ghostly laughter echoed within the murk. It felt as though every step we took awakened dormant memories and vengeful spirits that had been entombed by time and neglect. I couldn't shake the gnawing thought that the park was not merely haunted by random spectral forces, but by a collective sorrow and rage, a psychic echo of its tragic history. My mind wandered back to the stories my grandfather had told me of a day when the rides came to life, not with joy, but with the desperate cries of souls trapped within. It sent a shiver down my spine, especially now when the very rides seemed to be behaving in ways that defied explanation. The carousel's gentle rotations, the Ferris wheel's disjointed creaks, they were no mechanical failures, but rather orchestrated messages from beyond. Then, as if the park had decided to impose its full malevolence upon us, A piercing cry shattered our haunted vigilance. It was Marcus, his voice strained and fragile, carried by the cold night air. I spun around to see him standing near a shadowed alcove, his face pale and expression blank, as if he'd seen an apparition so horrifying that it had stolen his very essence. I think I saw someone, or something, he stuttered, eyes glistening with fear and confusion. The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Helena clutched my arm, her eyes darting about in search of the unseen menace. The night's oppressive grip intensified as we tried to make sense of Marcus's words. We gathered around him, and in the dim light, he pointed toward the outskirts of the park where a labyrinth of broken attractions and weeds dominated what was once a place of exuberance. There was someone, Marcus repeated, his voice barely audible over the rustling of dead leaves, stirred by an unseen force. I saw a figure near the entrance of the funhouse, and then it just vanished. I felt a deep unease settle within me, an instinctive warning echoing from the depths of my past. The hours spooled on, and our exploration veered deeper into the sinister heart of Turcadilmus Amusement Park. We reached structures that bore the scars of time and decay. A fun house with shattered mirrors that reflected our terrified faces in disjointed, horrifying fragments. A concession stand where faded posters of long-gone attractions now looked like macabre relics of a forgotten era, and pathways overgrown with nature's relentless determination. Every ruined attraction seemed to hold a story of its own, whispered through creaking metal and ghostly murmurs that told tales of despair and tragedy. I attempted to focus on the rational, a trick of the light, a malfunctioning machine, the adrenaline of youthful bravado, but the psychological horror of it all was unrelenting. The surreal interplay of calm exploration and sudden, intense terror left our senses frayed and minds ensnared in a relentless cycle of anticipation and dread. With every step, I felt as if I were not only walking through the physical remnants of a ruined park, but also through the very corridors of time itself where the anguish of the past was etched into every crevice and rusted bolt. As we finally made our way back toward the Ferris wheel, a heavy silence descended upon our group. The ride towered above us, its skeletal frame outlined against the fog like a spectral guardian of forgotten dreams. The atmosphere crackled with a palpable tension, one that made a rational thought futile and every instinct scream in protest. In the distance, I thought I heard a faint sobbing, a sound so sorrowful and profound it tainted the very air we breathed. My heart pounded as I realized that the park's supernatural presence was drawing us inexorably closer to an inevitable, climactic tragedy. Then, as the night crept toward its darkest hour, Helena suddenly gasped and pointed down one of the narrow, weed-choked paths leading away from the Ferris wheel. "There!" she cried, her voice trembling. In the beam of her flashlight, I caught sight of a figure, indistinct, as if half consumed by the fog, standing motionless. My pulse hammered as I recognized that this was not Marcus or Elena. It was someone entirely different. Someone rendered in the ghostly residues of past lives. I tried to call out, but the sound died in my throat as the figure slowly faded into the darkness. Moments later, a scream tore through the silence, a sound so raw and primal that it echoed off the derelict walls and sent chills racing down my spine. I ran toward the source, my mind a frenzied jumble of disbelief and terror. When I arrived at the location, I discovered an empty space where my friend Elena had been standing just moments before. In her place lay a scant set of footprints in the damp earth, as if she had been swallowed whole by the night. Panic surged through me. I called out desperately, "Elena, where are you?" My voice bounced off the ruined structures with no reply. each reverberation a hollow testament to my growing isolation. The realization struck me like a lightning bolt. One of my closest friends had vanished without a trace. Marcus and I frantically retraced our steps, our breathing ragged with terror as we navigated the maze-like remains of broken attractions. Every creak, every whisper in the dark, carried the weight of a tragic warning. I thought back to the personal connection I shared with this place, a connection steeped in memory and sorrow, and the images of my grandfather haunted by the park's legacy resurfaced in my mind with painful clarity. He had always warned me of the park's dark power, the unfathomable forces that could twist and consume even the lightest of hearts. With a mounting sense of dread, Marcus and I found ourselves drawn inexorably towards the haunted Ferris wheel, its silent witness to the park's endless tragedies. The structure loomed in stark relief against a moonless sky, every rusted sprocket and creaking joint resonating with the weight of lost souls. I felt compelled to document our journey on my smartphone, trying to capture even the faintest hint of an explanation for what was unfolding. As I recorded, an intense chill enveloped me, a cold that was not of this world, as if the park had decided to reclaim one of its own. That final, irreversible moment arrived as I stood beneath the Ferris wheel's imposing shadow. The mechanical groans crescendoed into a dissonant chorus, and for a moment, time itself seemed to stand still. In the sparse light of my flickering flashlight, I saw what could only be described as a ghostly vision. Elena's face, pale and strained, emerging from the swirling fog before vanishing into the night. The apparition was agonizingly familiar and painfully transient, leaving a scar on my heart and a warning on my soul. Marcus, standing beside me, had dropped his phone, its screen now reflecting only the horror etched on our faces. In the midst of our despair and mounting terror, I felt a sudden, overwhelming presence, an indescribable force that seemed to seep from the very bones of the park. The possessed rides, as if awakened by our intrusion, began exhibiting impossible behavior. The carousel continued its haunting rotation, its distorted melody rising to a crescendo, while the Ferris wheel's gondolas creaked and groaned in an eerie, coordinated rhythm. There was no escaping the overwhelming sense that the park was alive and that it had claimed us as a part of its tragic tale. I tried to escape, gasping for breath as I darted through the labyrinth of abandoned attractions, Marcus following close behind. Every step felt weighted with an otherworldly presence that sought to ensnare our souls. But in the chaos of our desperate flight, a sudden realization struck me, a thought as chilling as the cold spots that punctuated the night. The park's history, its legacy of strange incidents, was not a series of random misfortunes. It was a meticulously woven tapestry of despair and supernatural grief. And now we were its unwitting protagonists. In those final agonizing moments, Marcus's panicked whispers and my own staggered pleas for Elena echoed off the crumbling structures. No matter how fast we ran, the oppressive fog seemed to stretch out infinitely, and the disembodied voices of the past taunted us relentlessly. I reached a fork in the worn dirt path near the base of the Ferris wheel, and as if guided by unseen hands, I turned left, hoping it might lead to an exit. Behind me, Marcus hesitated, his eyes wide and uncertain, before reluctantly following. We both knew, deep down, that we were no longer merely exploring an abandoned park. We were caught in a trap fashioned by spectral vengeance and the tragic memories of those who had come before us. Then, when hope seemed as fleeting as the ghostly visage of our lost friend, a final, cataclysmic surge of supernatural energy overwhelmed us. The carousel's macabre tune reached a fever pitch, and an invisible force sent a destabilizing shock through the ground beneath our feet. In that horrifying instant, time fractured. My last anguished thought was a desperate plea for Elena, for Marcus, for any sign of mercy from the malevolent presence that had become the soul of the park. And as the spectral forces converged upon us, the world faded into an endless void of darkness and despair. I awoke to silence, a silence deeper and more absolute than any darkness could conjure. I lay amidst the ruins of the park, the cold earth seeping into my skin, my heart pounding with the echo of a memory that refused to fade. Marcus was nowhere to be found, swallowed up by the park's relentless hunger, and Elena's disappearance was as inexplicable as the ghostly apparitions that had haunted our every step. I was left alone, haunted not only by the loss of my friends, but also by the ineffable revelation that the park's supernatural presence was real, and that it thrived on our deepest fears and sorrows. In the days that followed, I found myself unable to shake the harrowing images of that fateful night. Every groan of metal, every flicker of light on my smartphone screen became a reminder of the catastrophic price we had paid to confront a legacy of ghostly torment. My attempts to rationalize the events, attributing them to malfunctioning machinery or overactive imaginations, proved futile. The park had imprinted itself upon my soul, leaving behind a trail of psychological scars and a chilling certainty that some doors once opened can never be closed. Now, as I pen these words, I remain forever bound to the spectral echoes of Turcadilmes Amusement Park. I have learned that curiosity, no matter how well-intentioned, can unlock horrors far beyond our understanding. The abandoned park stands as a monument to tragedy and spectral injustice, a place where laughter once echoed, now replaced by the silent cries of those taken by the darkness. The haunted carousel and twisted Ferris wheel continue their eternal dance in the fog, a grim reminder that the past is never truly buried and that some mysteries are meant to be left undisturbed. I share this story not only to warn others of the park's malevolence, but also as a testament to the fragility of the human mind when confronted by the unnatural. In the quiet hours of the night, when the fog rolls in and cold spots haunt even the sturdiest of hearts, I can still hear that discordant melody rising from the forgotten rides, a ghostly lullaby for lost souls. Even now, as I wander through life burdened by the sorrow of that tragic night, I cannot help but wonder, was our exploration the final chapter of an old curse, or merely the beginning of something far darker? The truth, like the park itself, lies shrouded in mist, a secret that refuses to fade into oblivion. To anyone who reads these words, heed my warning. Some mysteries are bound by a past steeped in tragedy and need not be disturbed. If you ever come across an abandoned amusement park, especially one with a legacy of strange incidents and spectral warnings, remember that what hides in the forgotten corners of our world might reach out in the darkness to claim what is rightfully its own. I learned that night the terrible costs of curiosity, and though I survived to tell the tale, the echo of that spectral presence will haunt me for the rest of my days. In the end, the park claimed more than just memories. It claimed lives and left behind a void that can never be filled. Marcus and Elena are lost, not merely to the night, but to a grim fate written in the annals of the supernatural history of this forsaken place. And so as I stand here, burdened with despair and the heavy knowledge of what lies beyond the veil, I offer my final bitter lesson. Some doors, once opened, lead to realms where tragedy reigns, and you may discover that the price of unlocking the past is far too steep. This is my story, a confession and a caution. and a desperate plea to those who might be tempted to challenge the unknown. Do not wander where the echoes of sorrow call, for what awaits in the shadows is not just a relic of forgotten joy, but a living nightmare that thrives on the pain of its visitors. In the silent, fog-enshrouded ruins of Terkadilmis Amusement Park, the possessed rides whisper secrets of despair, and the darkness consumes with indifferent cruelty. I remain, scarred by the tragedy of that night, a living testament to the horrors that hide in the twilight of our world. And so, if you ever find yourself facing the lure of forgotten dreams and demented histories, remember my tale and be warned. The ghosts of the past are never truly laid to rest, and once you enter the realm of the haunted, there is no escape from the eternal tragedy that awaits. The night was foggy and chilling that fateful evening, and in its embrace, the supernatural reached out and claimed not only our sense of wonder, but also the lives of those who dared to disturb the slumbering spirits of a time long past.